Good evening, fellow Plexers. This video is going out to Steve in the UK. I've been helping him. He's a brand new member of the Plexaholic support group. He wants to run Plex, but he was under a CGNAT situation with his provider. I identified that pretty quickly, and he contacted them and he could buy his way out. And then I gave him some tips on how to get himself set up with port forwarding on his router, and he was quite successful. And he has a new little mini computer powered by a Intel N100 CPU arriving tomorrow, and he is chomping at the bit to get Plex installed and start adding a library. So my advice was to always use a Linux install of Plex because it's portable. It can be transferred to a Docker container, which is just Linux, and then run on any system. If you want to run it on Windows, you can do it. If you want to run it with Docker under Ubuntu or Mint or a Mac, you can do it. If you want to move that Linux install into a container under Unraid, easy peasy. If you want to move that Linux install onto a Synology or a NAS as a package for both of them, they're still Linux installs. Easy peasy. What you can't do is start out with a Windows Plex server and move that someplace else. Whenever you want to move it, you can only move it to another Windows machine because part of your damn settings is stuck in the registry. If you love Windows and you're never going to use anything else besides Windows and you're 100% sure of it, use what you love. But if you think you might move to your own NAS type of software with TrueNAS or Proxmox or Unraid, don't freaking do a Windows install unless you're prepared to run a Windows VM just to transfer your original Windows server. Linux is the boss. You can run it any place that runs a container, any place that has a Linux install, even consumer NASs, because they all run Linux no matter what the OS is called. With Synology, it's DSM. Synology DSM is freaking Linux. So that's my Windows versus Linux spiel. It's not so much I'm in favor of one operating system over the other, which I am, but it's the portability of the Linux install with Plex Server that's the most important. So now that that's gotten out of the way, because other people will be watching this besides Steve, I suggested that you go on your current computer, download and install the Ventoy flash drive creator. I would also suggest buying a quality flash drive, something like maybe a Samsung drive or a Crucial drive. Maybe you get 128 gigabytes, maybe you get 256. They're dirt cheap now for the larger drives. Once you create the Ventoy flash drive, and the interface is almost identical, you pop your flash drive in. I don't know what's on this drive, but let me pop it in. Let me refresh this because this is a service. You have your flash drive, you click install, and when it's done, it's done. Unfortunately, under Linux, there's no actual program with a GUI to install. You have to start it with a terminal command once it's downloaded, which I did here, and then the instructions tell you to go to this web page because Ventoy is actually running as a service. Not everything is perfect under Linux, but it is what it is. You only need to make the flash drive once. So let me get rid of all of this. So there's something else to talk about. When you get your new mini computer, and I forget what it was already, I can look that up off screen probably. When you get that, you've got to look up the keyboard commands to enter your BIOS, and you want to turn off Secure Boot so you can install Ubuntu 24.04. And I would set that machine to make sure it auto restarts too on a power loss event. So when the power comes back on, you'd want it to boot back up automatically. Now, I don't like power loss events because it could corrupt databases, it could damage things. So I'd rather see you invest in a UPS early on. But honestly, I don't know how to connect a UPS to an Ubuntu install. I know how to do it under Synology. I can extend that to Unraid, but it's doable. I just don't know how to do it. So you want to protect your Plex database by not having power suddenly cut. All right, so I am looking to see what system you've bought. We chatted a bunch today, so I've got to scroll back, see if I can find it quickly. All right, I know it's here someplace. Why was I thinking it's a mini forum or something? All right, this video is going to be long enough. I'm still scrolling and I don't see it. And I might have scrolled right over it. So that's not important. You do have to find out which key gets into the BIOS, turn off secure boot, make sure it restarts on power loss, and then you find out what key brings you to the boot menu. So once you format your flash drive, your Ventoy flash drive, you plug it in, or it's already plugged in, but you should see this in Windows Explorer, a flash drive named Ventoy. And as you see, I've just got a bunch of ISOs copied to it. So when I press the boot key on any computer and I boot off the Ventoy flash drive, I then get Ventoy's menu of all these different distros, and I can just choose whichever one I want to live boot into. Now you're probably only going to have Ubuntu 24.04 because I want you to install Plex as an Ubuntu Snap package. A Snap package install of Plex Server sets all your permissions for you. Oh, wrong browser window. I guess I closed my window. Okay, so if we go to Plex Downloads, and this is going to be a long video because I'm going to virtually install Ubuntu so you can get a feel for what it's like. All right, so this is detecting Linux. So I can choose my distribution. I want to use the stable one and not the beta. Click in here, and here's my choice: Fedora or Ascent install, 32-bit or 64-bit, and an Ubuntu 16.04 or greater on these different hardwares. We'd want the Intel/AMD 64-bit. So that's going to be a typical .deb file. Under Ubuntu, I don't know if the application manager, the App Store manager will install it. It may. You may need to install GDebi or Eddy first, but this install is the same Plex server you get under a Snap install, but you've got to figure out your Linux permissions all by yourself. That video I sent you earlier with installing Plex with Ubuntu already installed, you saw how I could just access any USB drive I plugged into it. You can't do that with this install. But the structure of the install is the same if you ever want to move it into a Docker container under another Linux distro, or even a Docker container under Windows. Again, I'm not so much anti-Windows, I'm anti that you can't move a Plex install from Windows to anything but another Windows install unless you're willing to lose metadata. All right, so we got that set up. We've got those parameters set up. Let me go to GNOME boxes. It opened off screen. You can see I've got a test Ubuntu 24.1 edition already there. I'm going to blow that away. I also have an Ubuntu Budgie. Ubuntu comes in different flavors. You could actually run a different flavor because it'll be the same Snap package. You see I got the Pop! OS Alpha running. I've got a Zorn install running, Elementary OS Beta. I've actually got the release candidate installed on another NVMe drive so I can blow that away. And I have an Elementary OS install. So I'm just going to hit the plus here. Install from file. You could download the OS. I'm going to find my ISO directory and I'll sort by name. And I want the Ubuntu 24.04 ISO. This is a long-term release. You could do 24.10 if you want, but it just came out. I'd stick with 24.04. All right, so the new virtual machine thing came up. Now, you may have to turn off UEFI, but Ubuntu should be able to deal with UEFI in the BIOS of your new machine. Just in case you can't get this installed or even live booted, go back to your BIOS and turn this off, and then just boot again off the Ventoy flash drive. But you shouldn't have to turn this off with Ubuntu. So I'm going to jump this up to 8 memories. I've got 32 on board here. And I'm going to make this a big 50 gigabytes. So now I'm just going to hit create. And this would be like you live booting off the Ventoy flash drive. You want to try or install Ubuntu, the first choice. So this is called live booting. And this means in the future, if you're interested in Linux, you can distro hop. You can put different distributions on your Ventoy flash drive and live boot into them and play around with them for 10 minutes, a half hour, an hour. And there's even a way to make a live boot persistent, not with Ventoy. Well, there might be with Ventoy. But with other software, you can create a persistent Linux boot, which means if you make changes, they're still there when you come back. So I'm just going to hit next. I will just keep hitting next. Now you'll pick your own English UK for your keyboard layout. I'm going to use the wired connection if you were using a laptop, which you really don't want your Plex server on Wi-Fi. You want it hardwired with a gig-capable Ethernet port to your router. And I'm going to choose to update during the install. Well, actually, it's going to update before the install starts, which means we have to restart the installer. So I just went down here, right-clicked, and chose Open. So again, my language, I'll get past this. My US English keyboard, use the wired connection, and I'll go with the interactive installation. And I'll pick the extended selection, and I'll install third-party drivers and download support for additional media formats. And let's look at the time. It's 9:36 at this point. Let me write that down. We'll see how long this takes. So it's just erase and install Ubuntu. Now, if your new device came with Windows on it, you want to preserve that, take the drive out and put a new drive in. Don't dual boot Windows and Ubuntu for a Plex server. One or the other. If you want to preserve that existing setup, buy a new drive, pull that original drive out. All right, so I'm just going to use my first name. And just use a stupidly short password. And you can require a password to log in or not, it doesn't matter. And I don't know what Active Directory is. My time zone comes up as New York, just make sure yours comes up accurately. And I'm clicking install. So it's now 9:37 as the install starts. So nobody wants dead air. So I will pause the video and come back once we have some action. Okie doke, I'm back. So it's 9:43 from 9:37. It was a 6-minute install virtually. So I will restart now and we'll see what we can see. So you pull your installation media out and you press enter to restart. Now some distros under GNOME boxes, when you restart, it'll boot off the floppy again. You just have to back up and remove the floppy from the settings of the virtual install. So you hit enter, type your password, and you're into the desktop. So Ubuntu Pro is a subscription service. We're going to skip that. This is up to you if you want to share issues with a team. It doesn't really matter virtually. Some people will just say no. And you can add apps by opening the apps store. So right now I am going to go to the control panel, which isn't here. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of some of these pinned things. Unpin. Unpin. I'll leave that pin now. I would normally install Google Chrome and uninstall Firefox. So right here is where you get to your apps to search for. Well, actually, you can see them down here. So I'm going to type settings. Then I'm going to right click over here and pin that to the dash. So if I go down to system, I can see main software updates here. And I'm going to install now. Let's get ourselves all fresh and fully updated. This whole procedure of installing Ubuntu and running your first updates is phenomenally fast compared to a full Windows 11 or Windows 10 install. If that's not superior, I don't know what is. But again, if you love Windows, keep using it. Better you than me. So while this is running, let me show you what I do. Under settings, let me make that full screen. Now you can adjust your displays. I have two monitors going on my Linux desktop. You only see the one here, the main one. But you can scale this. You'd see both monitors if you had multiple ones. I'm going to go to Appearance. No, maybe that's not what I want. I want Desktop. Now I use Pop! OS as my default Linux desktop, so it's a little bit different. So I'm going to unclick show the home folder. That makes it look like Windows to me. I am going to position the toolbar on the bottom of the screen. That makes it look more Mac-ish, like Elementary OS, which I have on my laptop, or Pop! OS. Uncheck panel mode will center it. That's what I like. The only thing I wish is that the show apps could be moved over to the beginning, because that's like an application drawer. But right now, Ubuntu still looks pretty good to me, just with these few changes. And then you can auto hide the panel and stuff like that, or the dock if you want, which means if a window overlaps it, it hides. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to restart. And we're going to log in. Now let me bring up YouTube Studio. Now this isn't in Ubuntu. This is my regular Pop! OS. And I'll go to Content and let me search Ubuntu. Of course, I sent this to you earlier today, but someone else watching this video won't have that same experience, so they can go here. And if I remember, I'll link that in the description of this video, because now that you know how to install Ubuntu, you can come to this video and learn how to set up Plex as a snap package and get some libraries added from, I think I did it with some USB media and the installed drive. Now, I think if you added a second or third internal hard drive, you'd still have to go through the pain in the ass college level Linux permission course to do that. But on your boot drive to use that or USB media, the snap package handles the permissions there. So anybody besides Steve watching, this is the video you have to come to. And I'll put this link in the description. If I copy it right now, maybe I'll remember to paste it. So Steve, that's basically it. You've got Ubuntu set up. Let me show you how to get Chrome installed if you're not a Firefox guy. I just don't like any of this stuff. Okay, so can't type fast. So I'm going to go to Google Chrome, download Chrome, 64-bit version. RPM is for a Fedora install. Fedora is a pretty good Linux distro too, but you have to do the Linux permission dance and learn all that if you install Plex under it. Okay, so it's downloaded. Let me close this browser out. Let me unpin it because I don't want it. Open up the file manager, which is called Files. I want this to look like that. Download. Right click. Open with App Center. Open. Now remember, this is a virtual session, so it's not going to be as fast as it would be installed directly on my 12th gen i9 processor with 32 gigs of RAM. I mean, it's doing pretty good with a virtual 8 gigs of RAM, but it's still not quite the same. And sometimes things don't always work properly in a virtual session. So let me try updating this stuff first. All right, so I don't really know what's going on here. So I have an Ubuntu 24.04 install live on another NVMe. My system can triple boot Pop! OS on one NVMe, the same Ubuntu distro on another, and I've got the release candidate of Elementary OS 8, which is what I used to use for a long time before discovering Pop. Well, so Chrome should install if you follow these steps. I'm not going to bother. We've done enough with this video. I'll get it on YouTube so you'll see it when you wake up. Pretty soon you're, 5 hours ahead of me. And when your new device comes, you can get Windows installed. NVMe drives are very cheap. You're keeping your media on USB drives anyway, so if you need a new drive to keep your existing Windows installed, go ahead and blow it away. Or go ahead and swap drives if you don't want to blow it away. If you don't care about Windows, just nuke it. You can always find another copy of Windows. Maybe go through the excruciating process of logging into Windows the first time so you can get your whatever type of key it is, because you can use that with an install of Windows. You can download Windows 11 to install, I think, right from Microsoft. Put that on the Ventoy flash drive and install it, and it's just not a legal copy until you put your legal key in it. It's not just a key, they call it something else, but that might be worth wasting some time to log into Windows properly on your new system just to extract that key however you need to. It's in the settings someplace, and just make a copy of it and put it in the Google Cloud or something, or the iOS Cloud, whatever ecosystem you're tied to. All right, so we're going to end this. And you know what? Before we end it, I logged out, I didn't stop it. I am interested in the budgie flavor of Ubuntu that I've got installed. It's still Ubuntu 24.04. I like the interface a little bit better, not quite as much as I like Pop! OS. And this is Pop! OS, clean desktop. You can't have folders in the desktop. Every time one's created, I delete it. And this is kind of like how Elementary works. When Elementary opens the application option, which is in the same place, it's this much of the screen here that opens up. This is different, but Pop is nice because you can use the predefined folders, or you can create your own. Like I've got some NAS things here, Office there, Plex related icons. This is something that came with its system. Docker container services, games, Google. Here are all my Google Chrome apps. So the Windows key is a super key under Linux, and that brings that up. And you can just, I don't know, you can just type. So if I type CHA, channels comes up. If I type SO, that comes up. Sonar first. So it's pretty easy to work with. I like the Mac-like look as long as it's Linux under the hood. All right, so this is the budgie spin of Ubuntu 24.04. I want to see if it's the same snap packages. So just a little bit different look. Let me see, you touch the bird up here for the application. And I don't know what they call the App Store. Let me just type App Center, just like Ubuntu, because it is Ubuntu. All right, so Plex Server, and does it say Snap? So I don't know if this is a Snap package install under budgie, under the budgie desktop environment. I would assume it is, but I'm not going to install it to try to test it with USB today. Well, this is virtual, so I couldn't do it anyway. So anyway, long story short, the Snap package install of Plex Server under Ubuntu will set your USB permissions properly so you can just access the media. So I know this is long, it became disjointed, but it is what it is, and good luck on getting this installed on your new hardware. I think you're going to have some fun tomorrow. Happy Plexing to Steve and everyone else watching.